The sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Beverly Hills luxury car showroom, making the already gleaming vehicles sparkle like precious gems. It was just another Tuesday afternoon in one of the most exclusive dealerships in Los Angeles, where Ferraris and Lamborghinis were lined up like fancy candies in a store window. The air smelled of fresh leather and expensive car wax, with a hint of the premium coffee they served to their high-end clients. Kanye West walked in wearing a simple black hoodie and designer jeans, his presence immediately drawing subtle glances from both customers and staff. He'd been there 3 times that week already, each visit longer than the last. This time, he moved between the cars with the confidence of someone who owned the place, running his fingers along their smooth surfaces and occasionally stopping to take photos with his phone. The showroom staff exchanged knowing looks. They were used to celebrities, of course. This was Beverly Hills after all. But Kanye was different. He wasn't just looking at the cars. He was talking to them, about them, around them. His voice would rise and fall as he shared his creative visions with anyone who would listen, and even those who wouldn't. "See, this right here," he said to a dumb sales associate who was trying his best to maintain a professional smile. "The curve of this hood is almost perfect, but imagine if we added subtle LED lighting underneath. Make it glow like it's alive. You know what I'm saying?" The associate nodded politely, though his eyes kept darting toward his manager's office. As the afternoon wore on, Kanye's enthusiasm only grew. He pulled out his tablet and began sketching modifications directly over photos of the vehicles, his movements becoming more animated with each new idea. A small crowd of curious onlookers had gathered, some pretending to look at cars while secretly recording videos on their phones. The future of luxury isn't just about speed and style, Kanye announced to no one in particular, his voice echoing off the showroom's pristine walls. It's about innovation, about pushing boundaries. These cars, they're beautiful, but they're playing it safe. We need to think bigger. Other customers began to look uncomfortable. A couple who had been seriously considering a sleek black sports car quietly asked to reschedule their consultation. The sales team's smiles became increasingly strained as Kanye's impromptu automotive design lecture entered its second hour. What started as a routine visit to one of LA's most prestigious car showrooms was about to become something none of the witnesses would ever forget. The air grew thick with tension as Kanye continued his passionate monologue about revolutionizing car design, unaware that his presence was causing mounting concern among the staff and other customers. The sunny afternoon was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would set in motion a chain of events nobody could have predicted. Little did anyone know, this moment would later be remembered not as an embarrassing incident, but as the spark that ignited something truly revolutionary in the automotive world. But for now, in that gleaming showroom filled with millions of dollars worth of luxury vehicles, the stage was set for a confrontation that would soon make headlines across the globe. The tension in the luxury car showroom had been building like a storm cloud on a summer day. Thomas Chen, the dealership manager, watched from his office as Kanye continued his passionate discourse about car design. He'd been patient, perhaps too patient. But when Kanye started talking about repainting a $500,000 vehicle that wasn't even his, Chen knew it was time to step in. Chen straightened his perfectly pressed suit and walked across the showroom floor, his footsteps echoing off the polished marble. He was used to handling difficult situations with grace. You don't become the manager of Beverly Hills' most exclusive dealership without learning how to handle delicate situations. But this was different. This was Kanye West. "Mr. West," Chen said, his voice calm but firm. "Could we speak privately for a moment?" The surrounding customers pretended not to watch, but everyone knew they were hanging on every word. Some had their phones discreetly pointed toward the unfolding scene. Kanye turned, his eyes bright with creative energy. "Why private? This is something everyone needs to hear. Look at these cars, they're beautiful, but they're stuck in the past. I'm talking about the future." He gestured expansively at a pearl-white Lamborghini. We could transform this whole industry. Chen took a deep breath. Sir, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, some of our other customers have expressed concern about the volume of your presentations. He chose his words carefully, aware of the growing number of phone cameras pointed their way. Concern? Kanye's voice rose slightly. People were concerned when I changed music. They were concerned when I entered fashion. Being concerned is what people do when they're afraid of change. The exchange was quickly becoming exactly what Chen had hoped to avoid. Other customers began to edge toward the door, while sales associates stood awkwardly by their desks, unsure whether to intervene or stay put. Mr. West, please understand. We respect your vision, but this is still a place of business. We need to maintain a certain atmosphere for all our clients. Chen's professional facade was starting to crack under the pressure of the situation. Atmosphere. Kanye laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. You're worried about atmosphere, while I'm trying to revolutionize the whole concept of luxury transportation. This is exactly what's wrong with the industry. Too worried about keeping things comfortable, too afraid to push boundaries. Their voices were bouncing off the showroom's glass walls now, creating an echo that seemed to amplify the tension. A young sales associate nervously adjusted his tie, while an older couple quickly finished their paperwork and hurried toward the exit. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice, Chen said, his patience wearing thin. Or we'll need to continue this conversation outside. That was the moment everything shifted. Kanye's expression changed from passionate to indignant. Outside. You don't even understand what's happening here. I could buy this whole dealership if I wanted to. The scene was rapidly spiraling out of control. What had started as a polite request had evolved into a full-blown confrontation, with both men standing their ground amidst millions of dollars worth of luxury vehicles. The afternoon sun continued to stream through the windows, casting dramatic shadows across the showroom floor, as if nature itself was providing theatrical lighting for the drama unfolding inside. Security guards positioned themselves discreetly near the entrance, their presence adding another layer of tension to the already charged atmosphere. Everyone in the showroom could feel it. This wasn't just about a disruption anymore. This was about to become a moment that would be replayed on social media countless times in the hours to come. The moment the security guards stepped forward, phones came out everywhere. The soft click of camera shutters filled the air like digital raindrops. The showroom's perfect calm had completely shattered, replaced by an electric tension that seemed to make even the luxury car's perfect paint jobs shimmer differently in the late afternoon light. Mr. West, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be, Chen said, motioning to the security team. They were dressed in sleek black suits that matched the dealership's upscale image, but their stance made their purpose clear. Two of them moved closer, their steps measured and professional. Kanye stood his ground, looking from Chen to the guards and back again. His creative excitement had transformed into something else, a mix of disbelief and rising anger. You really don't see what's happening here, do you? You're about to make the biggest mistake of your career. The security guards were now within arm's reach. Sir, we need you to exit the premises, the taller one said, his voice low and steady. He'd clearly handled similar situations before, though probably not with someone of Kanye's status. That's when the paparazzi, who somehow always seemed to know where Kanye was, started gathering outside the showroom's glass walls. Their cameras flashed like strobe lights, turning the simple act of being escorted out into what looked like a red carpet event. You're going to regret this, Kanye said, but he wasn't shouting anymore. His voice had taken on a different tone, calmer, but with an edge of determination that made everyone listening feel like they were witnessing something important. Watch what happens next. Just watch. The walk to the door felt like it took forever. Every step echoed off the marble floors, each one captured by dozens of cameras. Some people in the showroom tried to look away, pretending to be deeply interested in the car's specifications. Others didn't even attempt to hide their stares, their own phones recording every moment. Outside, The crowd had grown. Word travels fast in Beverly Hills, especially when it involves someone like Kanye West. The paparazzi surged forward as the doors opened, their questions coming rapid fire. Kanye, what happened in there? Were you trying to buy a new car? Is this going to be in your next song? The security guards created a path through the crowd, their presence keeping the photographers at a reasonable distance. Kanye walked through it all with his head high, sunglasses now on, looking more like he was leaving a fashion show than being ejected from a business. Someone in the crowd shouted, "They don't understand your vision. Yeet." A few others joined in with supportive calls. The scene was quickly turning into exactly what the dealership had hoped to avoid: a media circus. Back inside, Chen watched through the windows as the crowd followed Kanye down the street. The other customers were already sharing what they'd seen on their social media accounts. Within hours, this would be everywhere. The day Kanye West got kicked out of Beverly Hills' most exclusive car dealership. What none of them knew was that this moment, as embarrassing as it might have seemed, wasn't going to be the end of the story. In fact, it was just the beginning. The fury and humiliation burning behind Kanye's sunglasses as he walked away weren't just emotions. They were fuel for something bigger. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the street as Kanye disappeared into his waiting car. The paparazzi lingered, hoping for more drama, but the real story was already in motion. Sometimes, getting kicked out of one door is exactly what someone needs to build their own entrance. And if there's one thing Kanye West had proven throughout his career, it was his ability to turn rejection into rocket fuel for his next big move. The videos of Kanye's showroom exit went viral within hours. But while the internet buzzed with hot takes and memes, Kanye himself had disappeared into his Calabasas studio, a sprawling creative space that had witnessed the birth of many of his previous innovations. The walls, usually covered in fashion designs and album concepts, slowly began to fill with something new: car sketches. At first, his team worried. They'd seen him like this before, totally absorbed, barely sleeping, living off protein shakes and determination. Someone had ordered his favorite takeout, but it sat untouched on a nearby table. Kanye sat hunched over his massive desk, surrounded by car magazines, technical manuals, and dozens of sketches. "They think I don't understand cars," he muttered to himself, flipping through a book about automotive design. "They think I'm just another celebrity who wants to show off." His pencil moved across paper with increasing confidence, each new sketch building on the last. The embarrassment of being escorted out had stung, sure. But Kanye had long ago learned to transform public humiliation into creative energy. He'd done it with music when people said he'd never be more than a producer. He'd done it with fashion when the industry laughed at his first designs. Now he was about to do it again. Late one night, about a week after the showroom incident, one of his longtime producers found him surrounded by 3D modeling software tutorials on multiple screens. "You're really serious about this, aren't you?" the producer asked, watching Kanye adjust technical specifications on a digital car design. "When have I ever not been serious?" Kanye replied, not looking up from his work. "They kicked me out because they thought I was disrupting their peace. But what's peace without progress? What's luxury without innovation?" The studio became his sanctuary. Days blended into nights. His phone kept buzzing with calls from people wanting to talk about the showroom incident, but he ignored them all. This wasn't about revenge or proving people wrong anymore. It had evolved into something bigger. He started reaching out to automotive engineers, at first through DMs and emails. Many ignored him, probably thinking it was just another celebrity vanity project. But Kanye kept working, kept learning. He immersed himself in everything from aerodynamics to electric vehicle technology. The sketches on his walls evolved. What started as rough doodles became detailed technical drawings. He wasn't just designing the outside of a car anymore. He was reimagining the entire concept of luxury transportation. Solar panels integrated into seamless curves, Sustainable materials that didn't compromise on luxury. Ideas that even he had to admit seemed crazy at first started making more and more sense. 1 month after the showroom incident, his studio had transformed into something between an artist's workshop and an automotive design lab. Physical models made from clay and 3D printed parts sat next to mood boards and material samples. The takeout containers were now joined by empty coffee cups and energy drink cans. People think luxury is about showing off, he said one evening, explaining his vision to a small group of loyal team members. But real luxury is about pushing boundaries. It's about creating something that makes people question their assumptions. The humiliation of being kicked out of that showroom had become a distant memory, replaced by an obsession with proving that sometimes the best ideas come from outside the established system. Kanye wasn't just designing a car anymore. He was channeling every bit of frustration, every moment of doubt, every criticism he'd ever faced into something that nobody would be able to ignore. Little did the luxury car world know, but their comfortable assumptions about what was possible were about to be challenged by someone who had never been very good at taking no for an answer. Getting automotive experts to take him seriously was the first real challenge. While Kenny sat in his studio one morning, sipping his third coffee and reviewing his designs, his assistant brought in another stack of rejection emails from major automotive engineers. But that was about to change. "Tell them to come see for themselves," Kanye said, standing in front of his wall of designs. His studio had transformed into something that looked like a cross between a tech startup and an art gallery. "If they won't read my emails, let's make them an offer they can't ignore." He decided to host an invitation-only presentation. The guest list included some of the most respected names in automotive engineering, promising them something they'd never seen before. Most probably came out of curiosity, maybe expecting to see another celebrity's vanity project. What they found instead left them speechless. The studio lights dimmed as Kanye began his presentation. Gone was the loud, passionate figure who'd been kicked out of the showroom. In his place stood someone who'd spent countless hours studying, learning, and refining his vision. He spoke about aerodynamics with the same precision he once used to produce beats. He discussed sustainable materials with the knowledge of someone who'd revolutionized fashion. "Look at this," he said, unveiling a 3D model that seemed to glow in the dim light. "Everyone's focused on making electric cars that look like regular cars. But why? We have a chance to completely rethink what luxury transportation means." An older engineer in the front row leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. He'd come expecting to waste an afternoon. Instead, he found himself scribbling notes. The design wasn't just innovative, it was actually possible. "The body uses a new composite material," Kanye explained, running his hand along the model's surface. "Lighter than carbon fiber, but stronger. And see these curves? They're not just for show. Each one serves a purpose." The room filled with murmurs as he went into the technical details. These weren't just dreams. They were carefully thought-out solutions to problems the automotive industry had been wrestling with for years. The solar integration wasn't just slapped on. It was fundamentally part of the design. The interior wasn't just luxurious. It was revolutionary in its use of sustainable materials. "I know what you're thinking," Kenny said, pausing for effect. "You're thinking, this is the guy who got kicked out of a car showroom. And you're right, but sometimes you need someone from outside the industry to see things differently." One by one, the skeptics became believers. A young engineer who'd been checking her phone at the start was now photographing every slide. A veteran designer who'd come ready to dismiss everything was asking detailed questions about production possibilities. By the end of the presentation, business cards were being exchanged. Email addresses were being shared. The atmosphere had completely shifted from skepticism to excitement. These weren't just pretty drawings. This was a viable vision for the future of luxury vehicles. "I need the best," Kanye said as the crowd began to disperse. "People who aren't afraid to think differently. People who want to be part of something revolutionary. He didn't have to say more. Several of the engineers were already canceling their afternoon appointments, ready to dive deeper into the possibilities. As the sun set over Los Angeles, Kanye stood in his studio, surrounded by a small group of engineers and designers who'd stayed behind. They weren't just humoring him anymore. They were building on his ideas, suggesting improvements, seeing possibilities they'd never considered before. The man who'd been escorted out of a luxury car showroom was now leading a team of automotive experts towards something entirely new. And this was just the beginning. The next few months turned Kanye's studio into a buzzing hive of innovation. Computer screens glowed late into the night, showing complex 3D models rotating slowly as engineers fine-tuned every detail. The smell of coffee mixed with that of fresh clay as designers worked on physical models, their hands shaping the future of luxury transportation. "We need to test this again," called out one of the lead engineers, pointing to a wind tunnel simulation on his screen. Dark circles under his eyes showed how many hours he'd been at it, but his voice was full of excitement. "These numbers, they're better than anything I've seen in 20 years of designing cars." Kanye moved between workstations, no longer the disruptive force he'd been in the showroom. Here, he was a leader who knew when to push and when to listen. He'd earned the respect of his team not just through his vision, but through his willingness to learn and adapt. The sustainable materials team just sent their latest samples, he announced one morning, carrying a box of what looked like ordinary fabric swatches. But these weren't ordinary materials. They were revolutionary composites that felt like the finest leather but were completely eco-friendly. The prototype was taking shape in a converted warehouse nearby. Every day brought new challenges, but also breakthroughs. The solder integration they dreamed up actually worked, feeding power back into the vehicle's systems more efficiently than anyone had predicted. The aerodynamic design they'd spent weeks perfecting in simulations proved even more effective in real-world testing. "Remember when everyone said it couldn't be done?" Kanye asked one evening, standing next to the half-finished prototype. The car's curves caught the sunset light, making it look like it was glowing from within. "They said we were crazy to even try." The team had grown close over the months of intensive work. They'd shared countless meals together, celebrated small victories, and pushed through seemingly impossible problems. What had started as a celebrity's pet project had become something they all believed in deeply. One of the younger engineers looked up from his laptop, where he'd been running another set of performance calculations. "My friends at other car companies keep trying to recruit me," he said with a grin. "They don't believe me when I tell them what we're achieving here." The project wasn't without its setbacks. Sometimes materials didn't perform as expected, or systems didn't integrate as smoothly as they'd hoped. But each problem became an opportunity for innovation. When traditional solutions didn't work, they invented new ones. "The battery integration is still giving us trouble," reported the head of the electrical team during one late-night session. The room fell quiet. This was a crucial component. But Kanye just smiled. "Show me the problem," he said, pulling up a chair. For the next few hours, he worked alongside the team, not as a celebrity or even a boss, but as another problem solver. By morning, they'd not only fixed the issue, but had discovered a way to make the entire system more efficient. The prototype was more than just a car. It was becoming a statement about what was possible when you ignored the boundaries between different industries. Fashion influence showed in the interior design. Music industry technology had inspired parts of the entertainment system. Even the production process itself was being reinvented. "We're not just building a vehicle," Kanye told his team as they prepared for their first full system test. "We're showing the world that sometimes the best innovations come from outside the system." The prototype sat ready in the testing bay, looking like something from the future, but grounded in real practical engineering. The automotive industry was about to get a wake-up call, and it would come from the last person they expected, the guy they kicked out of a showroom for dreaming too big. The Los Angeles Auto Show was buzzing with its usual energy. Industry executives in expensive suits moved between displays, journalists snapped photos of the latest models, and car enthusiasts pressed their faces against velvet ropes to get closer looks at new vehicles. But there was something different in the air today. A sense of anticipation that had nothing to do with the traditional car manufacturers. Kanye's team had chosen a spot at the far end of the main hall. Behind massive black curtains, their creation waited. Security guards stood at strategic points, keeping curious onlookers from sneaking peeks. The rumor mill had been working overtime. Everyone had heard something was coming, but nobody knew exactly what. 5 minutes, called out one of the team members. Kanye stood backstage, adjusting his jacket. The same automotive magazines that had mocked his showroom ejection were now in the front row, cameras ready. Even the skeptics couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. "Ready?" asked his lead engineer, looking both nervous and excited. They'd tested everything 100 times, but this was different. This was real. The whole automotive world was watching. The lights dimmed across their section of the convention center. A hush fell over the crowd as soft blue lighting began to pulse behind the curtains. The same people who had shared videos of Kanye being kicked out of the showroom months ago now held their phones up, ready to capture whatever was coming next. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice filled the space. "Please welcome Kanye West." He walked out to a mixture of applause and whispers. Gone was the loud, disruptive figure from the showroom. In his place stood someone who carried himself with quiet confidence. He took the microphone and paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "A few months ago, I got kicked out of a luxury car showroom," he began. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, but he continued with a smile. "It was probably the best thing that could have happened. Because sometimes you need to be shut out of someone else's dream to build your own." The curtains began to move. The crowd leaned forward as one. Camera flashes went off like lightning in a storm. "Everyone told us it couldn't be done," Kanye continued. "They said we were dreaming too big, that we didn't understand the industry." The curtains pulled back slowly, revealing glimpses of something that made people gasp. But sometimes the biggest innovations come from outside the box. The vehicle that stood revealed looked like nothing anyone had seen before. Its curves seemed to defy physics, the surface catching and reflecting light in ways that made it appear alive. But this wasn't just art. This was pure engineering innovation wrapped in revolutionary design. "This isn't just a car," Kanye said, walking around the vehicle. "This is the future of luxury transportation." He touched the surface, which seemed to respond to his presence. Solar integration that actually works. Sustainable materials that feel better than leather. An AI system that learns your preferences. The journalists in the front row were frantically taking notes. Industry executives who had dismissed him months ago now stood open-mouthed. Even the other car manufacturers' representatives had wandered over from their own displays. But the real innovation. Kanye pressed a spot on the vehicle's surface, and portions became transparent, revealing the engineering beneath. Is how it all works together. This isn't just a collection of new features. It's a complete rethinking of what a luxury vehicle can be. The crowd surged forward as he began demonstrating the features. Questions came rapid fire from journalists, but for once, Kanye let his creation do most of the talking. The vehicle spoke for itself, each innovative element flowing naturally into the next. In the back of the crowd, someone gasped, "Is that the guy they kicked out of the showroom?" The answer was yes and no. The man standing proudly beside this revolutionary vehicle was something else entirely. A visionary who had turned rejection into revolution. The buzz from the auto show hadn't even begun to die down when Thomas Chen, the manager who had kicked Kanye out of his showroom, made his way through the crowd. He looked different now, less confident, more thoughtful. The sea of people parted as he approached the display area where Kanye was speaking with a group of investors. The media noticed Chen's arrival immediately. Phones came out, cameras started rolling. Everyone remembered the viral videos from months ago. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. The confrontation, the drama, the potential for another explosive scene. But Kanye saw something in Chen's eyes that the cameras missed. It wasn't anger or embarrassment. It was genuine curiosity. The same kind of curiosity that had driven Kanye himself to push boundaries and challenge conventions. "Mr. West," Chen said, his voice carrying in the sudden quiet, "I believe I owe you an apology." Kanye turned to face him, and for a moment, nobody breathed. The crowd pressed closer, expecting fireworks. Instead, they got something more powerful, genuine human connection. "No apologies needed," Kanye replied, extending his hand. "Sometimes we all need a push to think bigger." The handshake they shared wasn't just for the cameras. It was real, meaningful. Chen walked slowly around the vehicle, taking in every detail. His trained eye couldn't find fault with the craftsmanship. The innovation was undeniable. This wasn't just a celebrity's vanity project. This was the future. "I've been in the luxury car business for 20 years, Chen said, running his hand along the vehicle's surface. "I thought I'd seen everything. I thought I knew what was possible." He paused, looking at Kanye. "I was wrong." The conversation that followed wasn't about the past. It was about the future. Chen spoke about his dealership's decades of experience in the luxury market. Kanye shared his vision for revolutionizing not just cars, but the entire concept of luxury transportation. "Your showroom," Kanye said thoughtfully, "it's not just about selling cars, is it? It's about showcasing the future." Chen nodded, beginning to see where this was going. What if we could show people something they'd never seen before? The deal they struck wasn't just about business. It was about bridging two worlds: the traditional luxury car market and the innovative spirit of an outsider who dared to think differently. Chen's showroom would become the exclusive launch point for Kanye's revolutionary vehicle. "People are going to say I'm crazy," Chen told his staff later that day. "They're going to say I'm taking too big a risk." He looked around at the familiar showroom, seeing it with new eyes. But sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. The transformation of the showroom began immediately. The space that had once ejected Kanye was now being prepared to showcase his vision. Modern displays were installed, sustainable materials were incorporated into the design, and the whole atmosphere shifted from traditional luxury to innovative future. "Remember when they threw me out of here?" Kanye asked one of his team members as they oversaw the installation. "Now look at us." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The very place that had rejected his ideas was now embracing them fully. The story spread quickly through the automotive industry. It wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about redemption, about the power of thinking differently, about what happens when tradition and innovation learn to work together instead of against each other. As the sun set over Beverly Hills, casting long shadows through the showroom's windows, Kanye and Chen stood looking at the space where their confrontation had taken place months ago. The spot where security had escorted Kanye out would soon be where his revolutionary vehicle would be unveiled to the world. Sometimes, the best partnerships are born from conflict. Sometimes, it takes a moment of rejection to spark a revolution. And sometimes, the people who close one door end up helping you build a better one. 5 years had passed since that fateful day in the luxury car showroom. The story had become legend in the automotive industry, retold countless times in business schools and startup meetings. But the real legacy wasn't in the story. It was in the revolution it sparked. The Beverly Hills showroom, once known for its traditional luxury cars, had transformed into something entirely different. On any given day, you could find tech entrepreneurs, environmental scientists, and automotive engineers mingling with celebrity customers. The space had become more than a showroom. It was an innovation hub. "Tell me again about the day you kicked Kanye out," a young designer asked Chen during a launch event. The showroom was packed with people eager to see the latest version of what had become known as the most innovative vehicle line in the world. Chen smiled, adjusting his tie. "That's ancient history," he said, gesturing to the crowded space. "What matters is what happened after." Around them, Customers explored vehicles that looked more like art pieces from the future than traditional cars. Each one incorporated technologies that other manufacturers were still trying to catch up with. Kanye's influence had spread far beyond just creating a new kind of car. The sustainable materials his team had developed were now being used across multiple industries. The solar integration technology had sparked a whole new approach to energy efficiency. Even the production methods they pioneered had changed how other companies thought about manufacturing. Remember when everyone said it couldn't be done? Kanye asked during a small gathering of his original team. They had come together to celebrate another successful year. The engineers who had taken a chance on his vision were now leaders in their field, sought after by companies around the world. The showroom incident had become more than just a viral moment or a comeback story. It had become a symbol of what happens when someone refuses to let rejection define them. Business schools taught it as a case study in innovation. Motivational speakers used it to inspire audiences. But the real impact was in the lives it had changed. Young entrepreneurs would visit the showroom just to stand in the spot where it all began. They'd take pictures, shoot videos, share their own dreams of changing industries that seemed set in their ways. The security guards who had once escorted Kanye out now told the story with pride, pointing out where everything had happened. It's not about the car, Kanye often said in interviews. It's about what happens when you dare to think differently. His words rang true across industries. Fashion designers started collaborating with tech companies. Musicians began exploring sustainable production methods. The barriers between different fields started breaking down. The luxury car industry had been forever changed. Other manufacturers had to adapt or risk being left behind. The definition of luxury itself had shifted. It wasn't just about expensive materials and powerful engines anymore. It was about innovation, sustainability, and pushing boundaries. One quiet evening, after the showroom had closed, Kanye stood in the exact spot where he'd been confronted years ago. The space looked different now, modern, innovative, alive with possibility. But the lesson remained the same. Sometimes the biggest innovations come from the people who don't fit in, he said to a group of young entrepreneurs who had gathered to hear him speak. Sometimes you need to get kicked out of someone else's dream to build your own. The sun set over Beverly Hills, casting familiar shadows through the showroom's windows. But now those shadows fell across vehicles that nobody could have imagined 5 years ago. The story of Kanye's showroom ejection had become more than just a moment in time. It had become a reminder that sometimes the best way to handle rejection is to turn it into revolution. And somewhere out there, someone else was being told their ideas were too different, too ambitious, too revolutionary. But now they had a story to hold onto, a reminder that sometimes the biggest successes start with someone saying no.